basically start measuring what you're doing and be able to define how good looks like and go this path like to get to good. I'm Tom Winter, and this is SEO in 2026.
Tom, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
So my number one tip for 2026 is to focus on EEAT, but actual EEAT, not a fake one.
What is the fake one?
Basically, right now, when looking at SEO experts, I can see that a lot of people are trying to figure out like how to create EEAT without actually understanding what EEAT is. So they are trying to find like hacks, because we're SEO experts. We always wanted to find hacks, how to simplify the whole thing and how to add fake EEAT into the articles that we're writing. So basically, when I'm talking about fake EEAT, I'm talking about like just adding like a bio or an author to the article and then thinking like, okay, I'm done. This is exactly what Google wanted. So I think EEAT is a little bit more than that.
Okay, understood. So what you're saying is that some SEOs just create almost a fake author bio at the end of articles, and they think that this fake author bio is enough, even if it doesn't actually relate to someone who's real online.
Not only that, but they stop at that point. So I think Google in the last 25 years, like from the beginning that it started to create the search engine that they built, I think they are really at the place where they do understand what is value for the end user. So it's not an easy way to go around it and to find some kind of like a checklist that we can just like put into the article and make it happen. So all the techniques that we use to keyword stuff the articles are not working anymore. So we actually need to do what Google wanted us to do for the last over a decade or even 20 years to create value and to add value to the articles, the content that we're creating.
So, okay, maybe we're starting to do what Google wanted us to do, and Google are actually starting to be able to actually determine whether or not someone authoritative wrote a piece of content or not. But Google is perhaps going down in popularity as a search engine. You've got AI search engines coming up as well. Do other search engines treat this sort of content in the same manner? Do they actually look at EAT and try and rank your content based upon the same principles?
In my opinion, they do. Like from the data perspective, they definitely do. Still, like Google is the king. Like it gives probably 80 to 90% of the whole organic traffic to the website owners. So they're not gone yet. When it comes to LLMs, they're looking at similar factors. Like they want to see the authority. They want to see the trustworthiness and things that we are building, because they want to focus on the things that matters. They want to get the context that they need to provide the end user with the best possible answer. To be honest, like when it comes to Google, they were in a comfortable space because they were giving us 10 results. When it comes to LLMs, they give us one result. They need to give us an answer. There is no place for choosing. So they need to find something that is of value to be able to get the context that they need to answer the question that the user is asking.
Okay, so we've established that true EEAT is important for both Google and other search engines. So what is a practical set of steps that an SEO can implement in order to actually try to ensure that as much of their content as possible resonates with EAT?
Sure. Like, so I went to multiple conferences that a lot of speakers were talking about EEAT, and I asked a lot of them like a question like, okay, if you're telling that like you need to implement EEAT to whatever you're doing, how do you measure that? And they mostly said like, we don't. That's just like based on intuition, or we have like some kind of like a checklist, but checklist that was so formal that just like add the bio at the end, add the outer or something like that, which meant not much from my perspective. So we actually have to understand what is EEAT, how to define it, how to clarify exactly what do we expect from valuable content, and we need to start measuring it in this way. It's not a simple calculator that can just find how many times did you use a specific keyword inside the article. So keyword density inside the article is actually understanding like, what do we treat as value how do we define it and how we can measure it. When we can measure it, then we can be closer to getting to this goal because we know what we're looking for. If we know what we're looking for, we can find the path that leads us there. So from my perspective, when it comes to measuring EAT, the best solution that I found is basically using LLMs for doing that. If we can ask them and provide some kind of clarification from our side to be able to benchmark what we treat as EAT and calibrate them for that, we are able to get the numbers from them, to be able to provide a piece of content and then be able to measure exactly how we're doing that, like with the content that we're providing and what we're missing. Like, so the whole conversation can go much, much deeper into that.
So maybe it's worthwhile talking about the prompts that you're using with AI to actually try and actually get the answers that you're looking for. So what kind of questions do you ask AI to actually ensure that it's telling you the right information about EEAT and what you need to do to improve?
So there's a couple of ways to deal with that. One way is just to go to an LLM, like any one of them, and ask, like, how do you define EAT? You can start your journey from there. If you have some pieces of content that you believe are valuable, you can also provide it to LLM and tell, like, look, these are articles that I treat as really EAT perfect. So like for all of these 4 factors, they nailed it. So can you help me out to clarify and to calibrate, make a calibration rubric that will define what exactly EAT means? Once you have this calibration rubric, you can go back to any kind of LLM and try to verify any kind of content that you're creating by providing the content, telling like, please score on a scale of 1 to 10 this article based on these EAT factors, based on my calibration rubric, and here's my article. Best would be provide the article in Markdown format, because when you copy paste rich text format to any kind of LLM, you're losing all the headings, all the links, and everything else there.
So when you talked about based upon these EEAT factors, when you were sharing that with ChatGPT or whatever AI you were using, are you listing the factors specifically and giving it that data, or should LLMs actually know what EAT is at this stage?
Best would be to create a calibration rubric, because then you can get repetitive results. If you don't create a calibration rubric that will show like exactly when it comes to experience, I treat it as this and this, like when it comes to scoring 5 to 6, 7 to 8, and 9 to 10. When it comes to experience, trustworthiness, authoritativeness, like you can create such a rubric that defines exactly what you're looking for based on the things that you're creating.
And how do you know that the rules that you define most closely reflect the rules that Google are looking for?
You will see it in Google Search Console. So basically, if you define it in the proper way, you'll be closer to getting it right. I call it leap of faith metric that can give me results right now. Of course, we can base it on our intuition, but if we can't create a repetitive system to get to our goal, we're not able to iterate and make it better. So like this is an assumption that you will make based on the factors that you're looking for. If you don't have such a metric and if you're not measuring it, then you're going all over the place and you can't pivot from that. You can't make the process better. You can't iterate and make these factors more aligned with Google Search Console.
What's a common thread that you're seeing in terms of what websites are currently missing in content nowadays from an EAT perspective? What common suggestions do you see AI producing?
What I see, actually, the content got worse in the last 2 years from the moment that AI was released, all because most of content writers are actually using AI on daily basis. When they're doing that, they're getting lazy and they're getting information straight from AI. They're not delivering additional value. So their own experience, their expertise, case studies, maybe they found like some statistics, they didn't do the research. So they're only pulling the data that AI is like giving them. That's why the content got weaker. There's also like a lot lower margins on content right now. Like, so agencies are being squeezed for margins by customers. So they have to reduce costs. They're pushing their contractors to reduce costs. And this is why the contractors are starting to use AI at scale, but really in a way that just creates fluff, empty, and shallow content. So I believe that we have to focus on the quality. We have to define what quality is for us. For me, it's data. So basically, if I have a hypothesis, I need to find some data to prove it. If I have a case study from my side, I want to show it. If I have some original data or my opinions or quotes, I want to show it. So all of these factors, if we put them together, we create something of quality.
You say that over the last couple of years, content has reduced in quality, and obviously many perhaps marketing directors or big stakeholders in businesses will think, okay, I don't have to spend so much money on that nowadays. I can spend more money on paid advertising or whatever else they actually want to spend money on. If you're an SEO or a content manager, how do you articulate to stakeholders in a business that they have to invest more money on the production of content when it's so easy to do using AI?
Because of quality and the results, like definitely this is the thing. Actually, it's a little bit more funny on the market because many agencies, they brag about that they have like human written content, and they have some discussions inside the agencies, like should we go more into AI written content or not? But to be honest, because they're using contractors, most of them, they switched. But they switched without actually having control, because contractors switched to mostly writing content with AI, but they are not aware of that. So they're still selling the content as it would be human written, but it's actually not. Actually, what we should do in agencies, we should gain control of all the things that we're doing, and we should create a process that focuses on quality at the end. But like to gain control, we have to help the contractors or the people inside the company to actually have an SOP that will be strict in providing the value to the end user. To do that, we have to, again, go back to the rubric that I said, like in the beginning. We have to define what EAT is for us. If we don't define how good looked like, how do we want to get to good? That's impossible.
I guess the challenges with using AI is obviously, it's here. It's here to stay. It's just getting better. But you also want to be human-centric in terms of the concepts that you come up with for your articles and the imagination that you use and the differentiation that you have compared with other content out there. So how do you know when to involve humans and when's a good time to involve AI within perhaps rolling out the production of some of your content, or perhaps incorporating certain elements within your content so that you can scale content?
I think the question is not when, but rather what the humans are good at and what AI is good at. And this answers like basically your question when to put them. Because like I feel from the perspective of a human, like I feel AI is much better with a lot of things that I would do it at much lower speed. For example, research or writing a specific piece of content. Like I'll be worse on that, but I have like a lot of experience. I know my company inside out. I can actually strategize on the whole piece of content and so on. So I think it's a normal like cooperation between a human and AI. I call it cyborg method. So a human working with AI together, where both sides give the best values out of like every single side. So like AI gives the superpowers of AI, humans give superpowers of humans, and we can combine these skills together to provide better value at the end.
Should every piece of content incorporate EEAT in some way, if possible? Or is it only relevant for content that is discoverable from an organic search perspective?
That's a great question. Actually, I was writing an article a week ago where I had to sacrifice EAT because my main goal was to increase the lead conversion rate to calls on a specific piece of content. And there I had to sacrifice EAT for that, like just not to disturb the user from going along the path that I wanted them to go through. So sometimes we will have to sacrifice, but we have to do it just understanding what we're doing. So like I knew exactly what I had to do. And I knew that I will sacrifice EAT for a different goal. So conversion rate to a lead.
Tom, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
Basically, start measuring what you're doing and be able to define how good looks like, and go this path like to get to good.
Tom Winters, founder and CGO at SEO Wind. Find out more over at seowind.io. Tom, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thanks, David. That was amazing.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at seoin2026.com.